Hey guys, welcome back to Coffee and Questions. I'm so glad you could join us today as we just have an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation together, enjoy some coffee, and just take a little bit of a break, a coffee break, you might say. We like to here at Coffee and Questions talk about those things that, the questions that you might have about Christianity and the Bible and religion and sometimes life, and just do the best that we can answer them from the Christian perspective. And that's what we're here about. And so the question that I wanted to consider today was this question that gets bandied about by so many people, this idea that there are many ways to God. That all these different religions out there are all just different ways to God, and we're all just kind of looking at God from a different angle, and of course, so all pathways to God are equally valid, and that's a very interesting theory. It's called a pluralistic view of God, and it's very popular out there because it makes things easy. It makes things easy. That means if we believe that, then it doesn't really matter what pathway I can take. I can take whatever path I want to get to God, and I can just do what feels comfortable to me and what's easy to me. And we humans, we absolutely love our comfort zones and don't want to be challenged to step outside of it. And so it's a very easy thing to do. And also, it doesn't require a lot of work on my part. Man, if every way is the right path, is a correct pathway to God, then who cares? I don't have to spend a lot of time studying and getting to know God. I can just relax because all pathways are to God, and just whatever feels right is the right way to God. And the problem is that can't possibly be true, that all pathways are to God. I mean, if you think about it, just think about it logically for a little bit. All pathways cannot lead to God. They can't, because look, if you do a little bit of research, you begin to realize that these different images of these different pictures of God that these religions have are contradictory to each other, and they can't possibly coexist. There's a professor named Win Cordwin, and I love a lot of what he writes about different religions. He has a lot of good things to say, and one thing that he says is that of course it is possible to see two things as similar as long as you ignore all of the ways that they are different. If you just ignore all of the ways that they are different, then of course you can make two things similar. And he gives an example, and I'll just personalize it to me, but this is Win Cordwin's example. He says along these lines, all right, both my dog and I have two eyes. Both my dog and I are mammals. Both my dog and I have one mouth. We both breathe air, and we both like to eat food and drink water. In his case, I prefer other forms of liquid, but we're both drinking, whether coffee or water or something like that. So since we both have two eyes, and since we both have the same address, and since we both have a mouth, and we both have like to drink liquid, we must be the same. I mean, we're obviously the same. In fact, we're probably even the same. We were definitely the same type of mammal, but maybe we're actually the same thing. Maybe my dog and I are actually the same thing. I never even thought of that, because we both have two eyes. You see what I mean? When we begin to focus in on the very slim little similarities and not dig deep into the reality of what this religion teaches about God versus what this religion over here teaches about God, we begin to realize that we can begin to think anything. We can rationalize anything. But when we actually study the differences between the religions, when we actually study what the religion is teaching, then we begin to realize that those two things, that this God and this God are not compatible, and they cannot be the same God. Therefore, we cannot have the same pathway, a different pathway to this same God. It's impossible. And a good example is just looking at Christianity. Just looking at Christianity, what we know about Christianity, one very clear statement All right, Jesus says in John chapter 14, verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Well, that's a pretty definitive statement. It's pretty clear. Jesus is saying, there's no other way to God except through me, except through Jesus. That is the only pathway to God. Well, was he speaking the truth or not? If he wasn't speaking the truth, then he was lying about something that's a pretty big deal. A pretty big deal. And since he's lying about something that's pretty big, like how we make it to heaven, how we're saved, then why should I trust the rest of what he has to say? But if he is speaking the truth, then Christianity can't be the same, and can't be worshiping the same God as any other God, because these other gods have their own ways to get to them. But Jesus says, I am the only way. It's not through Krishna, it's not through Muhammad, it's not through, whatever you want to believe. It's only through Jesus. And so, obviously, that's a very exclusive right. And then you look at the Jews, and the Jews don't even believe that Jesus is a Messiah. So, obviously, Judaism and Christianity can't be compatible as both equally valid ways to God. Because Christianity says the only pathway is through Jesus. And so, and I just want to put out there, these people that are saying, oh, there are many paths to God, and all pathways are equally this valid paths to God, it's not true. It can't be true. And do yourself a little bit of favor and think more rationally through it. Because you know in your own mind, through your own studies that they are definitely different. And if you've done vast amounts of research and you recognize that this statement cannot be true. All right, and so I just wanted to put that out there. Next week I was thinking I'd talk about the whole illustration about the blind man and the elephant. A lot of people will present this story about blind men trying to describe an elephant as a good example, a good argument for why all pathways are to the same God, and that's not a very strong argument. So next week I'm going to cover that. I'm going to talk about it in detail, and I'll give you some references. But mostly today I just encourage you, if you want to know more about religions and what they actually believe, and if you want to believe about or understand how those compare to Christianity, I'd encourage you to check out Winfried Corduan. He's got a website, he's got some blogs, and he's got several books out there that address these sort of topics, and encourage you, read his stuff, use that as a diving point to start looking into all the other different things out there. So anyways, thanks for hanging out with me, guys, and this opportunity to talk. And if you've got other questions, or if you feel like I didn't cover something well, please let me know. I'd love to be able to address those. And thanks for hanging out, and I hope to see you guys next week. Bye.